This is from 3 days ago. Do you have one that's newer? Thanks.
Bio je ovo insert iz filma No Escape, u kojem se američka porodica sa 2 dece zatiče u sred državnog udara u glavnom gradu nedefinisane zemlje u Indokini. Da li živimo u svetu u kojem treba da strahujemo da će naša deca na letovanju biti u opasnosti od terorizma, političkih nemira i raznog drugog nasilja? Koliko vodimo računa o tim stvarima pri izboru destinacije i kako na te stvari gledaju ambasadori nekih od zemalja koje imaju značajan prihod od turizma? To će biti tema prvog panela. Čućemo od sagovornika. Vanja, izvolite.
Hvala, dobro jutro svima. Naravno, veliko je zadovoljstvo učestvovati i voditi ovakav panel. Mi smo zemlja u kojoj se engleski sve više govori. Svi stranci kažu, čim uđemo u taksi, taksisti govore perfektan engleski, tako da nadam se nećete imati ništa protiv da ovaj međunarodni, da kažem tako, panel posvetimo engleskom, odnosno uradimo na engleskom jeziku u čast naših uvaženih gostiju. Your Excellencies, good morning. Thank you for coming to Novi Sad. I know that some of you are fresh in Serbia. Some of you have been here for a while, and I know that all expats, all diplomats enjoy coming to Novi Sad. So now with great news that Novi Sad will into the 2021 be this capital of culture, we open our welcoming town to you too. It is a great pleasure to travel today, also to travel away from Novi Sad for a while. Thanks to you, we'll be able to visit just quickly, first Croatia, our neighboring country, then Israel, and then incredible India. Last night, I hope ladies will not mind if I start with your colleague. We will travel first to Croatia and then to East. It's just by coincidence that we sit together, closer together. So, Your Excellency, Ambassador Markotić, good morning to you. Last night on HRT, there was a gala program about gala dinner about something called Days of Croatian Tourism on the beautiful island of Brač. But just by coincidence saw that TV program, and I was really, of course, positively surprised how the gala dinner was attended by so many people who work in the tourism. And this event, of course, was opened by the Minister of Tourism, who communicated some great praise words for the people who are creating Croatian tourism. Excellent news, excellent figures also. Income, which is 9 billion now, and the goal is in 2020 15 billion just from tourism. So I was really positively surprised. Croatia is very close, is very famous both when it comes to people from Serbia and from other tourists. Tell us, what are the strategies? Minister of Tourism is very enthusiastic. He says, future looks bright. So what are your information? What can you share with today's audience about the strategies for future when it comes to tourism in Croatia?
First of all, thank you for inviting me on this conference. It's a real pleasure to participate, especially with my distinguished colleagues from Israel and India. Speaking about strategy in tourism in Croatia, first, our strategic goal was always to improve infrastructure. And this is something which we've done already, because you know that we are really very good covered by the highways, and that is precondition for developing any kind of tourism. Thank you. Then, only in 2016, we opened 40 new hotels in Croatia, 40, and category 4 stars and plus. So that is something which, without which you cannot develop tourism, because tourism does not only refer to private accommodation, but hotels are very important. So now, speaking of our percentage, we have 40% of hotels for 4 stars, 10% 5 stars, and 40% of 3 stars, which is improvement if you compare to the past. Tourism are very important as a part of all foreign direct investments in Croatia. So this is something which is still a very prospective because there is a lot of space to improve situation in foreign direct investments in tourism as well. You know that even now there are some negotiations about very, very significant projects. Last year, for example, we finally managed to privatize, to give concessions on Kupari, which is quite a big compound, and big hotel chain Marriott is arriving to Croatia. We believe that big hotel groups are really very important for developing tourism, but actually our main goal is to develop tourism based on small boutique hotels all along the coast. So very intimate hotels, small, luxury, and that is something which will and which already changed the structure of the guests in Croatia.
Definitely. Thank you. We all saw the clip from this movie, No Escape. We know the situation in the region and in the whole world globally. Things have definitely changed. Did Croatia, so to speak, benefit from the situation in the neighboring Mediterranean countries which were severely hit, as we saw from the statistics? How is the situation, I mean, having that in mind?
Yeah. First of all, you know, benefit from bad situation in other area is not a good base.
It's not a success, actually.
It's not success, actually. You have to make success by your own efforts and by making long-term policy, which is sustainable one. But this year we've got very good data, very good actually information about tourism in Croatia. In the first 8 months of 2016, we have already increase of 7.3% of the number of tourists. For example, the whole 2015 we have 11.5 million tourists in Croatia, and only in the first 8 months we already achieved 12.4 million of tourists, which is quite a significant increase of tourists. And of course, speaking about accommodation or staying, because that is the other category, yeah. Last year we have in 2015 about 60 million, and this year in first 8 months 65 million. That is something which is promising. I don't know whether that is impact of situation in Turkey, mostly because we have heard also from Mr. Chauhan.
Yes, the huge decrease.
Decrease in Turkey means increase in Greece and other countries in the region, Southeast Europe. But speaking on a long run, I mean, tourism is very vulnerable category, you know. this year you can have all the records, and next year it's enough to have one terrorist attack, and all the incomes, all the visits will fall apart. This is something which actually the world situation, terrorism, migration, etc. is very important for. And of course, you have to base your plan, your development on your own efforts, as I already said. And that impact of some world crisis areas could be of very short term benefits.
Hopefully, yes.
Yes.
I mean, hopefully it will soon pass and it
Of
will
course,
be
but
stable.
we are still under the threat of the migration crisis in Europe, especially. And what we will do if that happens, nobody knows. But still, what I wanted to emphasize that long-term plans should be developed on your own plans, on your own strategies, and like world problems, terrorism and migration could be of short-term benefit for some countries, of course, short-term declines for some others, but this is actually something which do not have too much connection with tourism as a industry, but for world politics.
Speaking of tourism as an important part of Croatian economy, last night Croatian Minister of Tourism mentioned that somewhat 100,000 people are employed within this branch.
Yes.
It's a huge number. It's
First of all, tourism participates in GDP 20%, which is huge.
magnificent. I wish wishful thinking for some countries in the region.
But for a long-term
Okay.
perspective, that could be danger. As I
Please
told you,
explain.
it's enough to have one terrorist attack in the region.
And
if
everybody
tourism
realizes.
fell, what about
Very
participation?
tricky.
Yeah, exactly.
Risky, yes.
And of course, a lot of people are employed in tourism, especially, for example, during the season. So our unemployment rate for the moment is 13%, 1-3, which is relatively low in our region. Due to the tourism, due to the success of the tourism. As I already said, and Mr. Chauhan and you also mentioned, 9 billion
Income.
euros. It could be even more because this year the weather was extremely favorable. This is also something which affects tourism, and this is something which you cannot influence. But that is why I emphasize again, you have to make a long-term strategy, not to depend too much on weather or
like unpredictable things like unfortunate
and
events.
try to prolong the season. That is the major task. If you have a season only for 3 months, then you cannot count on a sustainable long-term development. But if you can prolong tourism, and especially out of season, because the weather is even agreeable during this autumn, during the winter.
October, winter also.
Exactly. And that is why it's important to have big hotel companies from the world, because they usually bring their guests with
Yeah, the
themselves.
chain
Exactly.
companies, chain
Exactly.
hotels, yes. We saw how the town lives still, even if it was the third weekend in September. There were many tourists, most of them visiting Weekend Media Festival, but also an interesting thing we saw there. It was late September. We took a ride with the bike far away from the old town towards Villas Rubin and the Polari camping site. It was empty on the road there, but when we got there, there were hundreds, if not thousands of Germans camping still like it was in the mid-June. This is just an intro to my next question. From which countries today's tourists visit Croatia? Is it still traditionally Germans which are there from April to October? Or are there some changes? Robert also mentioned some new tourists. So what is the statistics in Croatia now?
Somehow we are very we stick to the tradition actually, and Germans, of course, are the biggest number of tourists. This year we already had a visit of 1.8 million tourists from Germany. The second is Slovenia, which is understandable. We are neighboring
Very
countries,
close.
and a lot of Slovenians have property in Croatia. The third is Austria, then Italy, Poland, Czech Republic, UK, Hungary, Slovakia, Dutch, and the others. That is the first 10. And usually that coincides with the statistics from the past. Of course, the number of tourists are bigger and bigger. They come more today, for example, with low-cost airlines. In the past, it was mostly by car.
Luckily, Croatia has those.
Yeah, because we have let's say, not a lot, but a few airports at the coast, and each of them, they have special contracts with some low-cost airlines. So that is something which is very encouraging, because foreign tourists take 90% of all the number of tourists. 90% and 10% for domestic tourists. The growth for foreign tourists was this year 7.3%, and for domestic 5.4%. So we still actually depends on the visits on foreign tourists, because there are those who are in bigger numbers, and actually there are those who make a profit in tourism.
So the good old formula which works is going to be applied in the future, I
But
guess.
you mentioned Rovinj, and Rovinj is an example of very good strategy in tourism. They are renovating all the hotels in the old city. And what is the reason for that? You know that Adris Group in Rovinj is one of the biggest companies in Croatia. They owned tobacco factory, which was sold to British American Tobacco. And the income of that selling was 500 million euros. So they have at their disposal 500 million euros. And that is how they managed to invest a big portion of that amount to tourism in Rovinj, because that is something which will compensate tomorrow the employment in rate of employment in the Rovinj, once when perhaps the factory
stops
tobacco
working
factory
or
will
be sold or
declined or something like that. So you know, this is a very good example, and they are making new hotels, 5 or 4 stars hotels, which could work throughout the whole season, and actually which attract the tourists from all over the world.
Just to wrap up, Minister of Tourism last night mentioned on TV that inland, the mainland, also needs to be developed. It's not only the coast in Croatia which is attractive. So, just your comment about how you think those plans are going to be realized.
This is something what is common characteristic for the whole region. Inland, we want to develop inland tourism, but that is one very, very good example of Zagreb as a capital. This year, in the first 8 months, Zagreb already had 740,000 tourists. In comparison to the last year, it is increase of 16.79%.
It's amazing.
And that shows that you can develop tourism, inland tourism as well. Of course, there is an opportunity for increased tourism in different spas in the North Croatia. And of course, so-called
rural tourism in Slavonia?
Tourism, yes, but rural tourism can We developed, it's mostly weekend tourism.
That's true, yeah.
It's
Friday,
not
Sunday.
tourism during, which you can develop during the week. People who are from the cities or from urban areas, they usually come to the rural areas over the weekend.
On the weekends, yes.
And that is what one should have taken into account.
Thank you so much for your input. Good advices from your side, and I hope you will visit Novi Sad, maybe stay on Oktoberfest
I'm
tonight.
very often in Novi Sad, actually, and even when it was a presentation of Novi Sad as a candidate for
Capital
of culture, I was there, and Rijeka was very much assisting people
nice.
in organizing the committee, because Rijeka has already won in 2020 and Novi Sad is in 2021.
Year after, that's nice.
Yeah, exactly.
Your Excellency, thank you so much for joining us today. Our two other Excellencies, Ambassador of Israel and Ambassador of India. I will give the floor to you, Ambassador Fischer Kamm, very shortly. Before that, I will just share my personal impression about the journey to Israel that I made during May this year, thanks to the Israeli embassy. I'm sure that you as Tel Avivian will be wholeheartedly the marketeer of that town, but I'm sure that not so many of people in Serbia know how beautiful Tel Aviv is. So looking back in time, looking on the map where Israel is located, this area is not a stable one. But nevertheless, millions and millions of tourists flock to the beaches of Tel Aviv, visit Jerusalem, Eilat. So how come? What's the secret formula?
Okay, first of all, since it's a panel, I would like to address the audience here and ask if anyone has ever been to Israel. Great,
2,
I
3,
counted on that.
4.
That's even more than I thought. You have surprised me. Okay, so let me start with some details about tourism in Israel, and I will answer, of course, your question regarding the security in Israel and how it affects, if it affects at all, tourism. And I might surprise you, and I will start maybe with the bottom line, that it doesn't really affect tourism to Israel, and I will explain why. First of all, tourism in Israel for many years has been based on two kinds of public. Jews who come to visit the holy country and come to visit their relatives in Israel, and Christians that came to Israel for pilgrimage. This is another situation completely different than the case of Croatia. We are not talking about competitive market. People came to Israel because Israel was unique, and it offered them something that they couldn't get in any other country. What is the meaning of that? First of all, the most popular places or most demanded places for tourists would be the holy sites and not necessarily the beaches. And secondly, it's not a seasonal tourism. People come all over the year. When Israel came to rethink about its strategy, it took this starting point. And the second thing it looked is what are the disadvantages of Israel. And Israel has several disadvantages for tourism. Well, you mentioned the security. You mentioned also the fact that people, at least in Europe or the US, cannot drive the car and get to Israel. They have to fly. It means that even if Israel could offer cheap stay in Israel, still you need to have quite a lot of money in order to go to Israel, and you need quite a long of time to go to Israel. And thirdly, Israel itself is a relatively expensive country. So going and marketing our beautiful beaches, and they are, wouldn't be so reasonable, taking into account that there are other beaches much more closer to the European continent and less expensive. So the marketing of Israel is going to another direction, and this is exactly the starting point. What is unique in Israel? What can Israel offer that other countries cannot offer them? So we have developed medical tourism, for example, taking into account the high level of medicine in Israel. We developed medical tourism. We developed business tourism. A lot of international conferences take place in Israel. we have developed urban tourism. You mentioned Tel Aviv. I'm from Tel Aviv, and I promised to promote Tel Aviv. Tel Aviv has branded itself in the last year, first of all, as a business center. Many businessmen, innovation country, innovation city, creative city.
Startups also.
Startup city. So businessmen, investors come from all over the world to come and learn about Israel and to experience Israel. And secondly, Tel Aviv has branded itself as the gay capital, not only in the Middle East, even in Europe. So the whole urban tourism has been developed a lot in Israel. You were talking about rural, for example, rural tourism. This is something that Israel took, but here again, I think that there are competitions coming from other countries as well. Cultural tourism. People are very interested in Israeli culture for many reasons, religious, but not only religious. So people come to understand, to visit museums, to visit the Israeli festivals. A lot of international festivals take place in Israel. A lot of very popular pop groups from Europe, rock groups, especially from the US, have this tradition to start their tour in Israel for some reason or another. Maybe they believe for religious reason that it will give them luck. They start, so they have lots of friends that come to Israel every year to start the tour with the rock groups in Israel. So all these together have made Israel a tourist destination. And since it is unique, maybe it is less fragile to security reasons. Because it's not a question, well, we feel like going to the beach and have some fun, so if there is a problem in Israel, let's go to Croatia. This is not the idea of most of the tourists. And Israel is less fragile to terrorist attacks. First of all, because people who go to Israel, they know what they are going to. It
They're
will not come
already
in
prepared.
surprise. I mean, people who are afraid of terrorist attacks probably will not go to Israel anyway.
If you go
so they are not part of our market. And if they come to Israel, normally they are surprised because it's hard for someone who live abroad, especially in Europe, and watching what's going on in the Middle East every day in the news, to think that in Israel there is normal life and people go to school every day and go to work and they're going out and they have fun and they have a nightlife. And people are usually very surprised to find it when they come to Israel. And thirdly, this is something that might disturb us as Israelis, but they are very welcomed by tourists, is the Israeli security measures. People feel secure because there are lots of security measures, there are lots of presence of police and military, and in the airport there are lots of checks. So people feel quite safe in Israel. Let me give you some data regarding that. 2013 was a peak year in tourism in Israel. We had around 3 million. The next year, 2014, we had an open conflict in Gaza with the Palestinians in Hamas. And during summertime, July, August, in Israel, hundreds of missiles flew all over the country, including Tel Aviv, Jerusalem, and the center, all the tourist destinations in Israel. And it seems that at the end of the year, touristically speaking, we had a very, very slight decrease. Now, during summer, July and August, indeed, people didn't come to Israel. Most of the people did not come to Israel. But since Israel offers something that other countries cannot offer, and it's not seasonal, people just postponed it to September, October, November, and December. So the decrease was very periodical and seasonal, but 2-3 months later, people came back to Israel. And these numbers continue, are very stable also to 2015, which was relatively calm year, and 2016, which was less safe year, and still people keep on coming, and the numbers are stable. And another statistic that I would like to give, some data that might surprise you, is that the Ministry of Tourism in 2015 made a survey regarding what would be the most, to rank their satisfaction of a lot of criteria in Israel. And people had to rank from 1 to 5 how they are satisfied from the services they got in Israel. And the highest points were given to archaeological and historic sites, to tour guides and to guided tours, 4.5. The fourth, and we are talking about a lot of criteria, was the personal safety, 4.2. So people are ranking their personal safety, their experience of personal safety in Israel as very, very high. And I think that it means everything.
It speaks for itself.
It speaks for itself. And another thing, in 2015, 50% of the tourists in Israel came for the second and the third time, more than twice. Only 50% came for the first time, and 50% came for the second, third, and fourth time, and even more to Israel. So it seems that we have quite satisfied customers in Israel, and people are coming back, and it seems that the experience that they have in Israel, including the idea of personal safety, is relatively positive.
Thank you for this this first. I think that many of people here present they don't know about Tel Aviv being a town, just like you mentioned, skyscrapers, business people, and then 200 meters from there is the beach. It looks like Miami, and it's such a surprise. So speaking of cheap flights, Air Serbia flies to Tel Aviv, and the flight takes like 2 hours. You can leave on a Thursday morning and be back on Sunday or Monday morning back in the office. So it's in accordance with my opinion, it should be just communicated more intensively, because people do not have maybe that information, how easy it is actually to reach Israel.
It looks like very far from here, but it's 2.5 hours to get to Tel Aviv. There are 5 weekly flights, direct flights of Air Serbia, and 4 weekly flights of 2 cheap Israeli charter companies, Arkia and Israel, that have started recently their direct flights. So in total, we are talking about 9 flights per week, relatively cheap. As I said, Israel may be not the cheapest destination, but for sure it is very unique. And I would say, if we are talking about marketing and marketing strategy, since for many years most of the tourists came for religious reasons, we had mostly 5-star, 4-star, and 5-star hotels. In the last 5 years, Israel has developed a lot of 2- and 3-star hotels, B&B, hostels, and this is something new. We are addressing now to a completely new public. We are targeting a completely new public than in the past, so that even the stay in Israel would be cheaper.
Yes, like a city break destination, very, very
easily
accessible by the flights by Air Serbia. Just to wrap up, in Jerusalem we pray, in Tel Aviv we play. Is that a motto?
And in Haifa we work.
In Haifa we work, yes. Haifa is like really a high-tech, really modern town. We wish you a great stay in Serbia. Corpress traditionally has great relationships with the Israeli embassy, just like with your previous ambassador, Ambassador Yossi. So thank you. We look forward to cooperate more with you.
Thank you very much.
Ambassador of India, you're a little bit too far away, just like India is. Please come closer. But India is not so far away. Many people have traveled to India, quite the opposite. I think if we travel from Croatia to Israel, and then it seems like it's far away, but so many people from Serbia have visited. Yes, Robert Chauhan, of course. How many people have been to India? Please raise your hands. 2, 3. 4. I hope that what to say about incredible India? You're the best brand ambassador, so I will not speak more. Many of us wish to travel to your country, so please share the ideas and the strategies which your country is using to promote its tourism. Thank you.
Thank you so much. In fact, thank you everyone for your presence, and thank you very much for inviting me. You know, Air Serbia is the best thing that ever happened to Serbia. Because Air Serbia has brought Belgrade so much closer to New Delhi. All you have to do is get into an Air Serbia flight, and it's about 5 hours to Abu Dhabi. And Abu Dhabi connects you with just about every city of India. You know, there are 700 flights between United Arab Emirates and India.
Did you say 700?
700 flights every week between UAE and India. There are more Indians living in the United Arab Emirates than the Emiratis themselves. And they virtually run every aspect of Emirati economy. So therefore, you have done the very smart move by doing this strategic partnership with Etihad. Because one of the Indian airlines, Jet Airways, also has a strategic partnership with Etihad. And because of this development of Air Serbia, we already have an air services agreement between India and Serbia. And now because of Air Serbia, we are now revising our air services agreement to provide better connectivity. But that apart, you all are very familiar with the Incredible India brand. And this is our greatest, in fact, global brand all over the world. And we play it out through all the major platforms in the world, whether it's major television channels such as the CNN, or major airports of the world such as the Toronto International Airport, or we do it through bus branding, outdoor bus branding, by enveloping the entire bus with Incredible India posters. And this is something that I have done in Belgrade for nearly 1 year. Or we participate in various international tourism fairs, as I do at the Belgrade International Tourism Fair with different themes. And we are always running out of our Incredible India bags that are very popular all over the world. And we also have, apart from this branding that we do, we have also introduced a new concept of electronic tourist visa. And we have introduced this for Serbia as well, which means that sitting at home on the touch of a button, you can get a tourist visa for India. You have to go online, apply online, submit your documents online, pay online, take a download, produce that download at about 20 different airports of India, and you get your entry into India. So this is very seamless. As third very important strategy is trade policy. We have now allowed 100% FDI into the tourism sector. And this has brought us great dividends because we have been able to attract now billions of dollars of investment for the development of the tourism infrastructure in India. And we have started tourism investment summits in India. And the last one was held in September last month in India, and where we signed as many as 86 memorandums of understanding totaling about $2.2 billion worth of investments into the tourism sector. And then we also provide fiscal incentives. We have provided a 5-year tax holiday to our hotels and restaurants of 2nd star, 3rd star, and 4th star, so that they do not pass on their tax burdens to the low-end tourists. And so this way we are able to attract tourists into India.
Thank you so much. The first one of the associations that I have in my mind is also film industry, which is also strong in India. Soap operas, is that the name? Yes, yes. Do you have some data from which countries majority of the tourists who visit India are coming from?
You know, speaking of the films, Indian films are seen by, you know, apart from the foreign tourists, our tourism campaign is also equally aimed at domestic tourists, because we are 1.25 billion people.
Everything is incredible in India, even those statistics.
Yeah. So we, in terms of the films which are watched not only by these 1.25 billion people, but also world over, and we also have about 25 million Indian diaspora abroad. So we, you know, Swiss tourism was made by Indian films. Because most of the Indian films, when they started doing location shooting outside, they went to Switzerland. And Swiss tourism was actually built by Indian films. Very happily, now Indian film industry has started shooting in Belgrade.
Really?
And we expect, yes, 2 films have been shot in Belgrade. These are films from South India. Bollywood has not yet caught up. But if Serbia can offer the same incentives that Bulgaria offers to Bollywood industry, then I think Serbia has arrived. And we also offer thematic tourism. You said which parts of the world come to India most. You see, India is a very ancient civilization. India is also a country which is the birthplace of 4 religions of the world. Of course, Hinduism, Buddhism, Jainism, and Sikhism. Now, the Buddhism spread all over Asia and a lot in Middle East also. So we have a very targeted approach to attract Buddhist tourists into India by promoting the Buddhist circuit. We have also promoted the Buddhist international conclaves. And Meera Adanya-Polak, who is one of your major TV presenters, in fact, she participated on one of these enclaves, and she was able to really propagate India tourism and Buddhist circuit on your television, which was seen by millions of viewers from Serbia and the region. I think this is a very important development. Also, because we have a large Indian diaspora abroad, so there is another theme, destination weddings. Lots of Indians, they get into their jet sets and airplanes, arrive in huge numbers in Rajasthan and Udaipur, etc. And they really do what is the whole 1 month long marriage festival takes place for every family. And we also have for countries that are very land bound, we also offer what is known as beach tourism. And for countries that have very flat topography, we also offer the Himalayan tourism. And so adventure tourism and spiritual tourism, people who want to see our ancient, countries which do not have that kind of heritage, they also come and see our forts and palaces of India. So whether it's spiritual tourism, forts and palaces of India, or beach tourism, or adventure tourism. So India is an all year round tourism destination. And although the tourist season is considered to be October to March, but actually people arrive throughout the year because while we have the Himalayas in the north, we have the backwaters in the south, we have the deserts in the west, and we have the rainforests in the east. So it's a year-long tourism destination. And we also offer lots of facilities, to the tourists in terms of security that you mentioned. We have tourism police in India.
Tourism police also.
Yes, yes. We have tourism police stationed at almost all the UNESCO heritage sites in India and other areas. We work very closely with the different state governments and local governments. We also have an incredible India 24/7 helpline for the tourists. And we also have an incredible India app for a touch of the button reservations for tourism and for
modern
stay.
technologies which can help definitely
Yes.
smooth the stay of many tourists.
Yes.
Ambassador Narinder, this was a great presentation. Thank you so much for that. We hope wherever you're going from Serbia that you will have a great time.
Thank you.
And
let me tell you that since you are already giving me a farewell, that Serbia is perhaps today the most peaceful and the safest place to visit. And that is something, that is your USP, that is something which you should propagate across the world.
when we chit-chat before the conference, you mentioned that there are great potentials in Croatia, Ambassador Markotić, with film.
Before you go to Ambassador Markotić, let me tell you that Croatia has become a great destination for film shootings, Indian film shootings also. Shah Rukh Khan and all the major heroes, they are now camping in Croatia. So next to Bulgaria, it's Croatia, and hopefully it should be Serbia next.
That's great. You can take mine.
I forgot to tell you, but my Indian colleague fortunately mentioned the role of film in tourism. And that is something which was quite shown in Dubrovnik. Dubrovnik was a place where Game of Thrones were shooting, also Star Wars, and you have like very big percentage of people, especially from US, coming to Dubrovnik to see the throne of Game Thrones, not the walls and something else. But this is something which improved the number of the tourists. And especially that is very useful because they shoot out of season. Also, a lot of Indian films were shooting in Dubrovnik as well, and area around. So they first fill hotel capacities. They spent a lot of money. I think that only for Game of Thrones, income was more than 10 million euros for Dubrovnik. There is also a lot of tourists coming to see spots where some films, some movies were shooting. For example, in South Korea, it was reality show shooting in Croatia, and after that we have for consecutive 2 years like 300,000 tourists from South Korea because they want to see where the reality show was shooting. And that is really very, very important role of film industry for tourism as well. And now Leonardo DiCaprio is arriving to Dubrovnik to shoot Robin Hood. So a lot of local people are always engaged as a statists. You know, they are very famous because they participate in the Game of Thrones, in Star Wars, now in Leonardo DiCaprio movie. So you know, it's also something which improve the income of pensioners and students in Dubrovnik as well.
Great new information. We will have a nice conference called Beocon in Dom Omladine in Belgrade, which deals with people, or which is for the people who like action heroes, who like movies and these interesting things. As on every conference, Ivan helped me with a tablet. We have a survey. We ask some questions to our distinguished audience. Maybe we can see the results.
Sad ćemo dakle pogledati rezultate ankete. Aha, anketa znači još nije urađena, ali...
We still haven't done that, so maybe we can do it later during the day. Then, if everything is fine, we can maybe close up the first panel.
Yes, of course, but do you have some questions?
Any questions?
We have questions from Twitter.
Twitter. Maybe you can comment on.
Dobar dan, imamo jedno pitanje sa Twittera. Vanja, pa ti ćeš da prevedeš. Pitanje je za sve učesnike panela. Koja vam je omiljena destinacija u Srbiji izvan Beograda, a koja je omiljena kafana u Beogradu?
Oh, that's a nice question. So, what's your favorite destination when it comes to city or a spa, but outside of Belgrade? That's the first question. We will give you the mics. And the second question, what is your favorite bar or kafana? Maybe we don't have to translate, it's kind of international. So we can start with you, Your Excellency.
It is really not because I'm here, but Novi Sad is my favorite destination. I am quite often here, and I take always my guests to Novi Sad. I love Petrovaradin, I love the center of the city, and I love Ribarsko Ostrvo.
Fisherman's Island.
Fisherman Islands with all the restaurants. I have my favorite, but I will not say publicly.
Commercial.
It's this commercial. And speaking about restaurants in Belgrade, Lorenzo Calamba for me.
First of all, hearing both my colleague talking about movies, I thought about the slogan in Israel for tourism, shooting in Israel, and then I thought it's a very bad idea.
Yeah, shooting, yeah, exactly.
That's not the best slogan.
Always available.
24/7, all year round.
No, I mean, before being a diplomat, I had a horrible profession in Israel, which is a ski instructor in a country of desert and beaches, but so Kopaonik would be probably my destination, my favorite destination in the next years. But still, I've been here in Serbia for 2 months only, and this is my 3rd visit to Novi Sad. So it means that, again, I'm a satisfied customer here, coming back. I've just had the opportunity to visit the Tara Mountains. Personally, I like wild nature, and it's adorable, it's beautiful, and as I think has been said by my colleague, Serbia should brand itself and make a very intensive marketing, because I think there is a huge potential for tourism here that hasn't been fulfilled yet. I see what's going on with the interest of Israeli tourists regarding Serbia, and I see a dramatic increase. We don't have numbers yet, but I see a dramatic increase in the number of tourists coming here. I heard that all 9 weekly flights up to December from Israel to Belgrade are fully booked. My kids themselves were left because of overbooking and couldn't arrive. So I think there is a huge potential that should be worked on much more here in Serbia.
Do you have a favorite kafana in Belgrade, Novi Sad? Restaurant?
Still not.
Commercial? Not yet.
Not yet.
Not yet, but I'd love to answer this question in a year time. I promise to give you a whole list and to be updated.
I'll make you a list of recommendations. I'm in 4th year.
Great.
Yeah.
Ambassador Narinder, do you have a favorite place in Serbia?
Well, actually, I would first of all compliment Serbia. Yours is a very pristine, pure, beautiful country. And that is something that you need to promote. And your highways are really butter. They are like butter. When we travel from Delhi to Novi Sad, or we travel, from Belgrade to Novi Sad or to Nice, or even further south, we arrive at our destination without a hair out of place. I mean, your highways are so smooth. And perhaps I'm trying to compare the situation back home in my country. But, and the scenery on the right and left of the highways is simply breathtaking. Those are really areas that you can work on. And your pedestrian streets, I come from New Delhi, so I like the bazaars, I like people. So wherever the people are, that is where I would like to go. And as far as the restaurant is concerned, I think Madeira restaurant is something that one often likes to go to. Thank you.
Question is for all of you. What you see as a main obstacle or main challenge to Serbian tourism? We can see that we have great food, that security is much better than rest of the world or rest of the region. But what can you recommend from your point of view, from point of view of your country or your tourism industry, 1 or 2 things which must be changed in Serbia? Be honest.
You ask diplomats to be honest?
But I think the tourism infrastructure. I think because you have Danube running throughout, all through your country, and you have such, pristine, pure nature out there. But then that is something which looks very, very good when you see from top, looks very, very good when you see from the road. But in terms of actually going and living there and enjoying the place and building an entire ecosystem on those areas is something that Serbia could work on, building the tourism infrastructure.
Could you give the microphone?
It's very hard to say for me because I'm really fresh here, but I think I said it before. I think that marketing and lack of information I think that marketing and lack of information for foreign tourists regarding Serbia is one of the highest obstacles that I would see for tourism here in Serbia.
Well, I fully agree what my distinguished colleagues have mentioned, both of them, but I would just add also hotel capacities in Serbia. There is a lot of space for improvement. So I hope with all that 3 things we mentioned, situation will be substantially improved.
Thank you. I will consult with my colleague now.
Ja mislim da imamo sada rezultate ankete, bar do sada odrađene.
Excellent, so we can comment
Sad ćemo
maybe on
vidjeti.
that.
Samo da pogledamo u kom redu je ovaj
Tablet is
tablet,
traveling
da, sa
from
pitanjima.
person to person. Who has the tablet? Okay. Good. We will just wait a sec.
Možemo da uzmemo, da proverimo za sada šta je odrađeno. Sad ćemo vidjeti i na video zidu.
In the meantime, I really did not know about this Game of Thrones. This is my lack of information, but it's really, really interesting fact. Thank you for sharing that. Yes, I will translate the question. If there were no new, hopefully, terrorist attacks, would you in a half year's time travel to some of the following destinations? And there are multiple answers which are possible. You can see the statistics. So on first place number 1, yes, 81% would travel back to Istanbul even if they knew that there was a terrorist attack. Place number 2, Antalya, also in Turkey, 25%. Egypt, Hurghada, 25%, Paris, 37%. So would, if there were no, would you in half year's time after this event, would you travel back? How would you comment the statistics? What are your impressions?
Apart from loving Istanbul by myself as a nice city, I can see that shopping tourism is still the major one.
I'm really not surprised. I think that this is a bit the question. Istanbul, in many aspects, is relevant also to the case of Israel in the sense that it produces something that other destinations cannot or do not propose. And that's why I do believe that quite quickly Istanbul will be able to recover in case there is a relatively calm. And Turkey in general was very popular among Israelis for many years. It has been decreased in the last years, not necessarily because of the terrorist attacks, because of the political relations between the two countries. And maybe this is something that I should also say a word about it. People like to come where they feel welcome, even politically speaking. And the fact that people, for example, when people ask me, why would we come to Serbia, Israelis? I say, because it's a friendly country, because you feel very well, you will feel good here, you feel at home, because there are similarities of mentalities and so on, and because people are really friendly, and people are looking not only for a safe place, but a friendly place. And when there is even not a terrorist attack, but a kind of political divergence, where people would feel not welcome in a country, they would not come. This is, for example, the example of the Israeli decrease of number of tourists to Turkey, and I believe that quite quickly it will recover.
Thank
you. And just one additional element, that when you are looking at a country, you also look at that country's food. So whenever we do our tourism promotion, we also provide food, as we have tried to make an attempt at this particular forum. And I invite you all to please sample Indian food during lunchtime here. And so therefore, the inherent idea is that if you like our food, you would also like to visit India. So perhaps you like Turkish food, so that's why you want to visit Turkey more.
Thank you so much. If there are no questions, we can maybe wrap up the first panel.
Yes, thank you very much. Vanja, hvala.